Welcome to Spill Your Beans. I'm your new host, Nick, and I have with me a special guest. Her name's Harman from the Chunni Project. So Harman, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a 19-year-old university student. I'm studying at Simon Fraser University. I'm pursuing an English degree. On the side, I'm also a writer, and as you mentioned, I also run the Chunni Project.
Okay, wow. So what inspires you to go into writing?
I come from an English background. My dad had a master's in English from India, and he used to teach there. And I grew up learning about English, and my dad used to tell me about Shakespeare, and I guess it just piqued my interest.
Okay, so it kind of comes easier to you.
And I was always really good at it in high school.
Yeah?
And people always thought I was going to go into science or, being a doctor.
Because you're just that
Yeah,
all-rounded.
And no, it's kind of like an Indian stereotype where people think that you're either going to become an engineer, a doctor,
Go where the money is.
Yeah, but I decided to break through that and decided to pursue English.
Really?
Yeah.
So was English your first language, or were you learning Punjabi first, or?
Well, my parents always encouraged me to stay to my roots, so I actually started learning how to write English and Punjabi at the same time. So as soon as I entered kindergarten, I also entered Punjabi school. But the language that I grew up learning was Punjabi at home. My parents encouraged me to speak Punjabi. But of course, as I hit school, English started to be spoken at home as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember if it was hard for you to pick up the language, or?
No, not really, because I was surrounded by older cousins and they all spoke in English. So English came really easy to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you say you went to a Punjabi school as well, or?
Yeah, it was part-time.
Part-time?
So it was kind of like an after-school thing where after, going to regular school, you'd go after school to Punjabi school.
Yeah. And they would just teach you Punjabi?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, was it religious at all, or?
You could choose the religious aspects of it. The place that I went to, they taught you, the course was for 3 years. So you learned Punjabi for 3 years. And after that, they also offered religious extra activities that you could choose to do. Yeah.
Cool. So what's your religion? Are you Sikh, or?
Yes, but it's actually not pronounced Sikh. It's actually pronounced Sikh. Sikh actually means to learn, learner in Punjabi. And so that's why it's called Sikh. Yeah, because our religion is, we believe that we're always learning and that your learning is never really done throughout life. So that's why.
Wow,
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because your whole life is basically a whole learning experience.
Yeah, learning experience. So, and Sikhs, and we follow our guru, and guru means teacher. So you have the learner who's learning from their teacher.
Okay.
Yeah.
Guru.
Yeah.
That sounds very familiar. Like, sounds similar to Gurdwara. Is that?
Gurdwara. Yeah.
Yeah.
Guru actually, guru translate. The ru means light, and gu means darkness. So if you put it together, guru is the light that destroys the darkness. That's what it translates
Wow.
to. Yeah.
That's deep.
Yeah.
We got into something really deep fast.
Yeah.
Okay, so your religious background is Sikh, and is there a meaning for the turban that you wear, or am I saying that correctly?
Yeah,
the turban,
turban is the English word for it. The Punjabi word for it is dastar. And so if you ever see a woman wearing a turban and she says she's Sikh, it's the sign of a baptized woman. So when a Sikh is baptized, they're required to cover their head. And that's because if you ever go into the Gurdwara, which is the temple for Sikhs, you cover your head regardless of if you're Sikh or if you're just visiting from a different culture, and that's to show a sign of respect. Now, Sikhs believe that God is everywhere. We don't think that he just exists in one place. We see him in everyone and everything. So if you believe that God is everywhere, then it's just covering your head as a sign of respect to God. The reason I wear a turban, I don't have to wear a turban to cover my head. I could be using a scarf. Many women choose to tie a bandana. The turban is a symbol of royalty. So 300, 400 years ago when Sikhism first started and it was a brand new religion, we faced a lot of scrutiny and a lot of other religions didn't want Sikhism to rise. And so in those days, turbans were only worn by royalty. So the Mughal emperors of the time were the only ones that were allowed to wear a turban. And the reason that Sikhs started wearing turbans was to rebel against that and to show that we were resilient. So bringing it back to now, in our religion, men and women are seen to be equal. So I get a lot of questions saying, I never really see a woman wearing a turban, and why are you wearing a turban? So if a man can tie a turban, so can a woman. And it just gives me, I feel very powerful when I wear it, and I feel very unique. So that's the reason I wear a turban.
Okay. And then I was researching this a little bit too, and like your project's name, Chunni means scarf.
Yes, yeah.
And is there any similarity between the scarf and a turban? Could you wear that in place of one?
Yes, of course, yeah. So the thing is, you just have to have your head covered. And there are a lot of women who choose to just use the chunni to cover their head. But the chunni is not just a religious symbol, it's also a cultural symbol. So a lot of women who are not baptized Sikh or who are not even Sikh, so if you're from a Hindu background, a lot of Indian women wear the chunni. And it's not necessarily over your head, you can wear it around your neck or you can tie it around your back, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Instead of wearing a turban, so you're still respecting God that way?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to get more into the Chunni project, but before that, I think we'll take a quick break to a commercial, and when we get back, we'll go deeper into this subject. Welcome back to Spill Your Beans. We're gonna go further into this Chunni project with Harman, and I guess the first question I'd like to ask is, when did you start?
Well, I've had this idea for a long time. I just wasn't sure how I wanted to go about doing it. I kind of started something in November 2015, but I gave up on it because it just wasn't working out the way I wanted it to. So in January, actually, it's really cliche, but I made a New Year's resolution, and I told myself that I wanted to do everything that I hadn't done, that I had always planned to do. So I started the Chunni Project, and I basically, how I started it off is I talked about the idea to some of my close friends, and I got a lot of support for it. I talked to my parents, and they said, go ahead, do it. And the social media platform that I was most comfortable with at the time was Instagram, because I felt that it was kind of easy to control your content there, because there's always people out there who have something negative to say, so being able to delete comments is always a good factor. So yeah, I chose Instagram as my platform, and I just took it from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you ever have to delete any comments from your pictures?
You bet.
Really?
The Chunni Project is a safe platform for Indian women. And if there's people out there saying nasty things, it's not safe. So I always, I always make sure that I get rid of those comments right away. But I've had a lot of people say rude things under, the pictures and posts. Yeah.
Racial slurs and that stuff? Or
I've had racial slurs. I've actually had very sexist comments. People asking me why, as an Indian woman, I'm doing it just for Indian women, and I actually had people from men from my own community maybe upset at me because I wasn't representing them, that I just chose to represent women. Yeah.
Okay. So how do you usually respond? Do you comment back, or do you just delete and forget about it?
If it's a comment, I usually don't reply back to that, because once again, it's supposed to be a safe place, and I don't want any negativity. But I've had people direct message me on Instagram, and I do carry out a conversation with them, because if I'm just to ignore the message and delete it and never think about it ever again, it takes away the chance to educate somebody and maybe, make them have a realization.
Right.
So yes, I have had conversations with such people, but so far I've noticed that they've been in vain, and people just don't want to. But
Yeah. So you're trying to shed some light into their darkness.
One day it might help somebody realize what they're doing is not good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is what you're trying to do with your Instagram
Which is
account
what
in
I'm
the
trying to
first
do.
place.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So you said your family and your friends inspired you. Where do you get your inspiration for your writing?
It comes from a lot of different places. When I first started writing, I wanted my writing to be universal and I wanted everyone to be able to relate to it. So if I ever had, wanting to write about my culture, for instance, I would refrain from it because I used to think, not everyone can relate to this. But then as I started to, get more deeper into my writing, I realized that writing is bearing my soul out for everyone to see. And I'm not going to censor that just because somebody else can't relate to it. So a lot of my inspiration comes from my life, so my personal experiences. And I talk a lot about religion and things that I'm passionate about, like female empowerment. I'm really passionate about that, so I tend to write about that a lot. And when it comes down to it, I love writing about love because I feel, that's universal and everyone can relate to that, so it's always important.
Okay.
Yeah.
So since you're writing about your religion and your sick people,
Yes, yeah.
why is it all in English?
Because the goal of my writing is not just to write about something and have somebody read it. I want a lot of people to be able to understand it. Now, if I was to write in Punjabi, I'd be, generalizing that all Punjabi people can actually read Punjabi, and that's not the case because I've grown up with a lot of people who don't know how to read Punjabi or write it, but they know how to speak it. So if I want to I know that most of my audience is a youth audience, and if I start writing in Punjabi, they're not going to be able to read it. And I love writing in Punjabi. I'm comfortable with it, but I feel like my emotions I can better express them in English. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I'd actually like to go back to the Chunni project. Is the writing for that project or?
No, actually, the writing and the Chunni Project are two separate things. I've actually kept myself totally out of the Chunni Project. I've made it for women, so I don't use it as a platform for my writing. I have a separate platform for my writing.
Oh wow. So what is this? What is the Chunni project?
So the Chunni Project is basically, I had an idea that, well, actually, it came with a realization that I don't think Indian women have enough role models in, social media and the culture nowadays. And I grew up from, a normal high school, and I noticed a lot of girl on girl hate, and it just kind of hurt that. We have so much potential and we can empower each other, but and there's so many stereotypes associated with brown girls nowadays that all they do is hate each other and gossip about each other, and I kind of wanted to erase that. So the Chunni Project was the idea behind it is to empower each other, and it was also a place where women could share their stories. So many of the submissions I've gotten is women just sharing some experiences in their story about what it means to be an Indian woman, what difficulties have they encountered because of the color of their skin, and I've had a lot of anonymous submissions as well, where people just want to get something off their chest, but they don't want to publicly state something. And I've gotten positive feedback for it. I've had a lot of women saying that, this is the perfect place to get something off their chest, whether it's anonymously or in public.
Oh, that's amazing. So for our viewers that are watching right now, and if they had something on their chest, where would they go to submit their thoughts?
Okay, so you can go to our Facebook page, the Chunni Project, and you can submit a story via the message link. You can go on Instagram at the Chunni Project, and you can submit via direct message, or you can also email us at thechunniproject@gmail.com. And all anonymous submissions are kept anonymous, so it stays anonymous, so nobody will ever know. And and I let people get creative with it. So when I first started out, I had a vision that I wanted all the women to submit pictures of themselves in their cultural clothing, where the chunni comes from, because I felt that I could use this project to keep people being proud of their culture and not shying away from wearing their traditional clothing. But as it proceeded on, I realized that wasn't necessary. If the women want to submit pictures in their cultural clothing, they can. If they don't want to, they don't have to.
Okay, so the platform you use for the Chunni Project is mostly on Facebook, where women submit their
Yeah.
thoughts there.
Well, right now it's more popular on Instagram. That's
Okay.
where we're most active. And I forgot to mention, other than stories and personal experiences, a lot of women actually have been submitting writing pieces, so poetry. And I've actually had a lot of women submitting art to do with the Indian culture as well. So it's just a mixture of stories and art. And I feel that somebody looking from the outside who was not a woman or, an Indian woman, it really gives a lot of insight into the Indian culture.
Okay. So do you have a website either, or is
No,
just Facebook and
just
Instagram for
Facebook and
now?
Instagram. I didn't want to make it too complicated. I just wanted it to be fun. And
Okay.
yeah.
Do you see any changes that you're going to do with the social media, or different directions you plan on going?
Well,
Like, what are your goals for
Well,
the
it's been
Chunni
working out
Project?
for me so far. I like how I've organized it and how it's very simple to put a submission through.
So you're mostly on Facebook and Instagram, but we're here on our couch right now. Why don't we share with our viewers some of your submissions?
Really, we can do that?
Yeah, of course we can.
I would love to.
So when we get back, we'll show you some of her submissions from her Chunni Project.
Welcome back to Spill Your Beans. As we said before the commercial break, we will be showcasing some submissions from the Chunni Project. Unfortunately, I can't showcase all of the submissions here, so I've chosen 3 that I think will really speak to you. The first submission we have is from Gurpreet Sangha. I chose this submission because I think she is a really positive role model for Indian girls in the community. The second submission is by Preetpal Kaur, and I really like this submission because it portrays how Indian girls can be shackled down by traditional values and expectations. The third and final submission is a poem that was submitted by Alina. And instead of just showcasing it to you, I'm actually going to read it out because I found it to be very powerful. Wherever you may be, whether it is in your homeland or a land far away that you've made your home, never be afraid of showing your roots. When you feel out of place, not truly belonging to either home, know there is a home in your heart where the blood of women before you runs. Powerful, strong women who wore their skin with pride and passion. They are your ancestry and they live within you. You may be as light as milk, as gold as wheat, as brown as chocolate, or a mixture of them all. But in you are the secrets of a million more shades. This is our culture, this is our way, this is who we are. I really love this poem because it's very inspiring and empowering. What I especially love about this is Alina chose to encompass women of all skin tones. That's exactly what we want at the Chunni Project. What you see sitting before you today is an Indian woman wearing a dastar, but that's not what I want it to be about. I want it to be about women from all walks of life and all different demographics. So help us achieve this. Regardless of if you're an Indian woman or not, please send us your poems, your art, and your submissions. You can do this by sending it to thechunniproject@gmail.com. You can direct message us via Instagram, or you can message it to us as Facebook. You can also send it to Spill Your Beans, and they can forward it to us. Since I said spill your beans, I think I'm going to spill my beans as well. I'm going to share with you something I wrote recently, and I hope it inspires you as much as it has inspired me. Here we go. I am 10 years old, and your tongue is stumbling over the syllables of English words. The more you struggle, the more I cringe. Your heart is racing as you look around and see disapproving white faces, and among them, an embarrassed brown one unable to look you in the eye. I'm so sorry, Ma. I could have spoken for you that day, but I came home and spoke against you instead. And you tried to explain to me that every time you try to speak this language, it's like acid in your mouth. I don't get it. I tell you to learn. I tell you to figure it out. And you tell me that you try to break it down into pieces, but it ends up breaking you instead. I am 19 years old, pursuing an English degree, mastering the grammar, perfecting the writing. I speak English without hesitation. I don't even have an accent, but Ma, they still look at me the way they looked at you. And it becomes clear to me that this language won't be able to hide the color of my skin or the turban on my head. And the same English words you had trouble saying are the ones penetrating my soul and breaking my heart. And all of a sudden, I am 10 years old again. But this time, I get it. I get that you tried to spill honey out of your mouth, but it came out like a poison instead. You tried to let it flow out like the river Satluj, but it wouldn't come out, just like a drought. I am 19 years old, and I curse this language that made you feel small. I had to take a big pause there and gather myself because this poem carries a lot of emotion for me and really hits close to home. Growing up as a first-generation Canadian with immigrant parents, it's really hard and it's a really big change. I hope this inspires everyone who not only has immigrant parents, but those of you who don't have immigrant parents to see what the experience is like. I talk about the English language in a bitter way and I end up cursing it, but this is not to curse the English language. If my parents had immigrated to a different country, let's say China, I would probably be cursing Chinese. I use English as a medium for my poetry because not everyone can understand Punjabi. English is very important to me, but I am cursing it in the poem as a way of expressing anger. Wow, that was heavy. You got to hear some submissions from the Chunni Project today. I'd like to thank the submitters who allowed me to showcase their submissions on TV. You also got to hear me spill my beans today. Now, let's take it back to the Spill Your Beans couch with Nick.
Wow, those were amazing. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for letting me share.
I hope our viewers enjoyed it as much as we have. And make sure you guys check out our social media as well as hers, and be sure to tune in for next time.
Location and studio provided by Sip Chai Cafe, located in West Abbotsford, your locally owned and operated cafe.